Thanks for joining me on another episode of Real Money Stories. This is the podcast where we speak to people from all sorts of backgrounds about their money experiences, their perspectives, and their journey. I'm your host, Jason Butler, and this week I'm joined by a real interesting character, a really, really interesting guy who I would say is a sort of kindred spirit in the financial well-being workplace space, and he is none other than Mr. Darren Laverty.
Hi there. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for being on the show. Now, you're a very, very busy chap, I know. Before we get into your backstory, do you want to just tell everyone what you do or what you pretend to do for your day job?
I call myself a financial well-being strategist, and I do that on purpose because there's a lot of people out there that are calling themselves financial well-being specialists. But if you look at their background, you can go on LinkedIn and you sort of see that maybe a year ago they were working in a shop or a secretary or could be doing anything, So I find it's sort of everyone's jumped on the bandwagon, and I think it's about strategy. And so I don't think that any company out there has got the monopoly on the answers to this. But I think what employers need to do is to have a strategy which is designed specifically to suit their community, their people. And so what I do is I've kind of got a broad knowledge now of financial well-being, what it means, what's out there, who does what, and I can help employers put together their strategy, which should be dictated by the needs and wants of their employees, by their employee benefits package, and then also it also depends on what budget they've got and what their priorities are. So I kind of help them find the optimum way through to get the biggest impact in the shortest possible time.
And we've spoken at conferences together, and I can tell you Darren's a great speaker, great stories, but also he's very practical. So I was really keen to get him on the show and a wealth of experience. So Darren, take us back to your sort of early money memories, because I'm always fascinated to hear how people kind of start their relationship with money.
We weren't poor when I was growing up, but we weren't rich. So I don't think I ever felt like I was... I went without, no way. But at the same token, there was quite a few people that had things I didn't have. So I was I come from a very working class background. My dad was one of 16 children, came over from Ireland. He's not that good at reading and writing. So when he decided what career path he wanted to go on, he used to have to learn on the job and then come home and then get my mum to read the books to him. And he ended up becoming a mechanic, which is what I did to begin with. He was a real hard worker. He played hard and he worked hard. And that's kind of what he instilled in me. But he never, ever, ever saved any money. Never, And so it wasn't even on my radar that would be a good idea. My dad lived for the day and he lived for the moment. He was very, very present. He never thought about the future. He never worried about the past. It made him very happy from that degree, but he's now, even though he ended up being a severe alcoholic, just a boozer, he's still alive. He's 80 years of age next month, and I think he's still alive because he never worried about anything. So, however, I don't think that's the right strategy, and parents can be a warning or an example, and there's a lot of good things I've learned from Dad. But, at the same token, there's a lot of warnings that I've learned from him as well. And so my attitude towards saving only came much, much later on when I got a job persuading people to save when I was about 22.
But and as we all know, the childhood, your family, your formative years can be very, very important about how you relate to money and how you respond to rewards and status and stuff like that. So were you a big family? What was the sort of, you said you weren't rich and you weren't poor and your dad was living for the moment, but what was the kind of day-to-day conversations about money and working and stuff like that when you were young?
My dad always said nothing will ever beat him and he never worries about anything. We never really spoke about money to any degree whatsoever. My dad used to, and I copied him, he could work his way out of a problem. So if he needed money, he'd go and get a bit more. If there's money out there, it just meant he worked a bit harder. And he used to work all the hours and work very, very hard for sure. So we had the family holidays. We didn't go abroad, but we had family holidays. We all had nice new bikes and we had nice Christmases. So money was there. He drank a lot, and a lot of money went down his throat, to be fair. And that was his illness, his challenge he had to live with. But we never, as a family, sat around a table and talked about money at all. That was never, other than we need a bit more money, I'll go and get it.
So there wasn't a scarcity mindset as some people have. We never, like my mum had a real scarcity mindset. It doesn't grow on trees. She was very, very feast or famine. But it sounds like your dad was always feasting, right? And so therefore, did you sort of think, okay, well, there's always money out there. Did you build that abundance mindset?
For sure. In fact, by the time I was 17, I hated school so much. I left school when I was 15. Because I was late in the year, so I did my O levels before I was 16. I left school straight away, and by the time I was 17, I had 3 jobs.
Really?
And that was me. I wanted to get out and work, and so I did 3 jobs.
Okay, so that was following your dad's kind of, if you need stuff now, you go out and get it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you do 3 jobs then? Tell us about that. What was that all involved?
Oh, I was doing an apprenticeship as a car mechanic. Well, it was actually a maintenance fitter, but there was cars involved, and cars were my passion, because I thought that if I loved cars, then wouldn't it be great to work on them for a living? And I soon realised that was rubbish. It was the driving of them that I really liked, which is why I went into motorsport later on in life. The other job I did was I fixed cars privately at weekends, every weekend, and I resprayed them, and I put new engines in and clutches, and I earned cash on the side. And I also worked at a nightclub 2 or 3 nights a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
What was the nightclub? What was that all about? Was that like a free social life, or was it just to earn money, or what?
No, it was money. It was money. I could make quite a lot of money. I was only getting paid £15 a shift. I'd start at 8 o'clock in the evening. The club had opened at 9. It would shut at 2. I'd work through till 3. Then I'd go home. But tips were great. So I could make more money in 2 nights at the nightclub than I would from the 2 other jobs. Just tips. I was friendly character. Made lots of friends up there, and so basically, I was getting £1 or 50p for every round I was pouring, and that was great money.
So what did you learn about yourself in those early formative years when you were juggling all those jobs?
I think what I learned was that I could put myself to anything. I think that I learned at that time what I didn't want, to be honest, and I really started to crave. I really liked working with people. I knew that. Fixing cars was not for me, and that was 2 of my jobs. One was an apprenticeship, one was actually my private work, and so I realised then I need to work with people. And so as time went on, when I looked at my boss in the engineering background side of things, I looked at his income, I looked at his lifestyle, and whilst he was a lovely fella, that was not the life I wanted. And I thought, why am I going down this road? And so I changed it. At 21, I decided I need to go into sales, and so and I wanted to have no lid on my income. I didn't want somebody else telling me what I'm worth. I wanted to be paid what I was worth. So at 21, I effectively went self-employed, but I got a job selling as a sales engineer for a year. That didn't really work either. That was too restrictive and a bit dull and boring. And then I eventually entered the world of financial services, believe it or not, when I was 22. And that way, I knew that whilst there was no floor and I had no guaranteed income, I had no ceiling either. And that really excited me. So that's why I went for that. And I am a risk taker. And so therefore, I jumped in ignorantly. And I did suffer to begin with. Some big lessons there. But I was prepared to take that risk. A lot of people weren't.
Now, it's interesting you said, I decided I had to go into sales, and you looked around you at your boss or whatever it was, and you thought, that's not life for me. But that's quite an interesting perspective for such a young person, particularly, a young guy back then. I mean, were you very self-aware, or did you just suddenly read? Was there someone you met? What was the catalyst for that?
No, I was quite materialistic then, if I'm honest. I think a lot of us are when we're in our early 20s. And I used to drive around with my wife. I mean, I've been with her since I was 18. And at that time, we would drive around the area where I live now, actually, looking at the houses and dreaming, and knowing that the only way I'm ever going to have a home like that and a life like that, was to go and do something for myself. Well, I need to do something where I can generate a lot of income. And I chose financial services. And that was the wrong career for me as well, believe it or not, at the time.
Really? Why was that?
But I went for the money. I had what the catalyst was. One of my dad's friends. Now, Dad being an Irishman, had lots of Irish friends. And one of his friends got a job at an insurance company, and basically he was out selling insurance policies and savings plans to people, and he was making a lot more money than I was. And this guy was not particularly bright and not very well turned out, a bit rough around the edges. Yeah, he was making good money, and he was making several £1,000s in a month, and I was like, trying to make £1,000 a month. And so the catalyst for me was, well, if he can do it, I can do it. That was it. I just saw him doing it, and what he had that I didn't have at the time is he had the kind of gift of the gab, and some people say I have, but I mean, he was a real charming Irishman, and he could prospect people in the pub every night, and that's what he did. He'd just pick up 2 or 3 leads every night by chatting to people in the pub and just slowly luring them in, and then say, I'll give you a call tomorrow or something. And then he'd wait a few days. By that point, they're dying for it. They're dying for the phone call.
But I see the analogy I think with that is whenever I've done triathlons and stuff, and I'm not saying it to brag, I'm just saying they're bloody hard. When I've done them and there's the big pack at the front, I thought, well, I'm not going to be at the front of the pack, but I'm going to use them as a pull me forward, because I think I can do better by looking at the people ahead. So that's what you did. You looked at a role model. That's good. So why do you say it was the wrong job for you then, if you thought, hang on, this is the way to earn lots of money, which you thought was important?
Well, I had no qualifications. I sort of had to exaggerate a little bit. I had an economics O-level. So I had to sort of exaggerate that a wee bit to get in. There was not a lot of checking done in those days, and I hate to admit that. But when I was learning economics at school, I learned all the mechanics. I learned banking. I learned about investments. I learned about all the way that money flows around the world. But no one taught me the most important aspect of it. And no one at school, and this is something I think schools absolutely got to do. They've got to teach people about what good behaviour and good habits are. We need to find out why people want to save money and invest money and preserve and plan and budget. And the key thing is, we all know that that's a logical thing to do, but we've got to want to do it. And that's the bit that's missing. I think in schools, we shouldn't be teaching about how a cheque gets cleared. That's what we were learning. I think we should be learning about why it's important to save, and what would happen if we didn't, what would happen if we did, and look at the 2 outcomes and choose which one you want. It's that and catching people really early. So one of my great examples, and it's I've mentioned this guy in my book, which is about financial education, and his name's Stuart, and he was 19. So if I was doing this, I got this job, I was 22, 23, and first thing you do is you book all your friends in, and then you get referrals. And I'm sure you've been through this back in those 80s. And one of my friends recommended me to his brother. His brother recommended me to one of his friends. And this friend called Stuart was 19. And he's not an ideal client. But in those days, you could get paid to persuade people to save. Now, whilst the products were not good, the habits it created were brilliant. And I think there's a whole piece missing. I think the baby was thrown out with the bathwater when they kind of outlawed them, because the policies weren't fantastic. This guy, after 10 years, his policy, I gave him a check, and it actually generated less money than he'd paid in because of the charges and all the horrible features of the policy. And I said, I'm really sorry, Stuart, that this is not quite what you've paid in. It's not actually grown effectively. And he said, Darren, I don't care, mate. Listen, in the last 10 years, you've got me into a habit from age 19 that I've never broken. And what he did is he increased his savings. He also had bought a property by time, in his early 20s. He was about to buy a second property. He'd started to fund his pension. Now, the guy never earned a lot of money. The guy actually spent most of his life working as a warehouseman. Now, obviously, in management eventually, but that was his role. He was very, very basic role. Nothing, never earned lots of money, but he always saved money. And the lesson I got from him was that when he was 47, which is just a few years ago, he was financially independent. Now, he doesn't work now. He chose not to work. He doesn't have to work. His assets that he's saved, he saved 20% of his income all his life. Those assets that he's built up over time now generate enough income for him never to have to work. He's got that freedom at that age just by having a good habit from age 19. And that's one of my favorite success stories that where I've made a difference to someone specifically, and that he didn't need to be a big earner to do that.
No. So you're in financial services. There was unlimited potential income, but you said it was a bit difficult to start with. So did you have sort of was it tough to earn money as a self-employed? You had all the freedom to earn nothing, basically, but it sounds to me that in years.
Well, you're self-employed, but you also, if you want to be, you were self-unemployed, if you wanted to be. The scary bit was approaching people, and that's where most people failed. So you have to get on the phone, or you have to go and organise an event where you network and meet people and prospect them. And I just put myself under pressure. I used to go to every party I could go to and try and prospect people. And I realised, actually, I've got to have two. I can't combine these two things. Go to a party to have fun with people. Don't stop trying to sell to them. Do that as a different day. And so I learned quite quickly that was a way to have a really bad party. But what I did do is I set up all sorts of different things where I could meet people. So I'd get involved in all sorts of networking, or I would I'd pop. We had a charity we worked for, and I put up a bouncy castle at a big fair in Slough. And it was for leukemia research, and I put a big banner up saying free bouncy castle for kids. All donations into the pot gratefully received in aid of leukemia research. So what happened is that the kids flocked to it. The parents did not have to pay, but they chose to put a few pounds in the pot, but they stood there waiting for their children. And me and my boys were walking around chatting them all up. So that's how we got on the
bouncy castle was the foundation of your future success. I love it. Bouncy
anything at all to get in a conversation with people. That was what it was about.
Yeah. So how were you at that stage? What was your person? Because you got married quite young, didn't you?
I was married at 28, so it's not that young. We were together
with your wife for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your situation like so you'd started to earn some money. What did you do? How were you with your money? Were you like your dad, spending it? And
yeah, I spent a lot. So I never had any money. What I did is I knew I could earn a lot. I always had this kind of over optimistic most of the time. So I always felt whatever happened, I could work my way out of it. Strange that I picked up these values from Dad, and I would just sell more. But in fact, through my 20s, I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. If I wasn't in the office, basically I would spend all day prospecting and marketing, all night talking to people and selling. And then Saturday, I'd be stood outside a supermarket. I'd pay to stand there and prospect people coming in, or stand outside B&Q, chatting people up.
But you were committed, weren't you?
I was very, very driven, really wanted to grow the client bank, and I met some amazing people. You cannot judge anyone. The people, I had a guy walked into B&Q and I prospected. I had a few good lines to get their attention. This guy, he was a scrap dealer, and he could hardly read all right. And I've still known him to this day. He trusted me, and he invested loads of money with me over time. And the guy, he's got several properties and around the place. He's financially independent, not because of me, but I was his financial advisor at the time. But this guy looked like a scrap dealer, and you can just never judge a book. And he's a really, really decent, friendly, lovely family guy. Made fortune out of non-ferrous metals by going to dumps and collecting them. And he had contract for it. Brilliant. So. You meet all sorts, and everyone goes to B&Q, so I did meet some fantastic people during that period.
But you made the interesting point that sometimes people, depending where they come from, they confuse conspicuous consumption and lavish cars on finance and all this with wealth and success, when actually most of the people I've met who really got a handle on their life, I'm not saying you can't have nice things, but they don't tend to live very flash lifestyles. They don't tend to have the newest car. They don't tend to go on 19 holidays and have the latest fashion stuff on, do they? They it's not to say that's wrong. It's just that really rich people tend to be quite understated, don't they?
Oh, for sure. I think what you have is, and I was certainly at this phase. I think it's called being an emulator. So you always want to be something you're not. You're always looking to, create an image. So when I was 25, I had the Rolex on. I haven't got any watch now. I had the Jag. I had an XJS.
Really?
I had the suit.
XJS
25. I had an XJS V12. I had I had bespoke suits made. And I justified it to myself. I said, right, why have you got? And I said, I need, because I'm young and I'm in finance. I need to look the part. I need to look like I'm professional, and I justified it. That was all rubbish. The reason I had an XJS is because it made me feel good. Well, I'm in it.
Stories, right? You were telling it was validating you. It was extrinsic motivation. Yeah.
Complete BS. It was not that at all. But
how did you change over your 20s then? How did you mature with your relationship with money, or did it change, or how did it change?
Well, you just grow out of it. I realised that I had some friends that got a wee bit cold on me for a while because I was just in your face. I was sort of trying to be something I wasn't. I had the nice cars and all the material rubbish, but I never had any money. And come to a point actually. The time I was about 26. My wife decided that she needs to take control of the finances because my income was never consistent. I always used to have this optimistic thing where I had a big paycheck one month and then I lived to that every month, where sometimes I had no paycheck or very small paycheck. And it's called the commission-only world of financial services in those days. And got to a point where my money got paid in the bank and I still couldn't draw any out because it didn't even clear the overdraft.
Oh, really?
Now, that's a pretty stressful place to go. You go to the cash machine, first day after payday, and you can't get any money out.
How did you feel? Was that stressful? Or?
Totally and utterly horribly stressed. And this was again a really major moment for me. Okay, sometimes you've got to hit rock bottom. Sometimes you've got to go through the pain to never want to go there again. Do you know what I mean? And so my wife said, right, and she took a gamble. She said, I'm going to come and work with you. I'm going to give up my job. I'm going to control you. I'm going to not control, but I'm going to support you in every way I can. And what she did is she took hold of the finances. And what we did, we had to open up a different bank account so that my next paycheck could go into the other bank and not get absorbed by the overdraft. And so what we did is we left the overdraft where it was. We ignored the letters. It was horrible. I mean, the actual bank charges were more than I was paying my accountant. He pointed out several times. So what we did is she slowly started to budget us, and this is where I'm so into budgeting because you got to know what's going on. And so what she did, she set up a budget. She gave us a limit of spending each month, and she started to save money to pay off the overdraft. And I remember it took about a year, to be honest, to work through it. But as soon as we had the plan, my stress went. Because the plan, we believed in it, but we put the stress into the plan. So we were at rock bottom financially, but we now had a plan. We worked out together. We could see light at the end of the tunnel. We knew in 12 months we'll be out the other end. We were going to have to get on with it. And suddenly, my work became much easier. I wasn't so desperate in front of a client. And that was definitely coming through. I was trying too hard. I was overdoing it. And so when the plan was there to get out of this problem, I then got the cash. Once we had enough cash to pay the overdraft off, I walked across the road from one bank to the other with the cash, and I paid it into the account, the exact amount to clear the account. And then I said, I'd like to close it down. Anyway, 3 days later, I got a letter in the post from that bank saying, we haven't closed your account because it's still overdrawn. And I rang them up and said, what are you talking about? And they said, oh, no, because in that sort of the time from the statement date to when you paid it off, there's a bit more interest applied. And it was only a few pounds. I just wanted red of the account. And it was like about £2 or £3 or something. Wouldn't close it. And I was so infuriated. I actually took their letter and I got a black marker pen and I drew around a V sign on my fingers and I posted it back to them. And I never heard any more. They closed the account. I got away from it. But that year was probably the most important year ever for my own.
Yeah, pivotal. And here's the 3 things I'm picking up from that is that 1, that you faced up to the situation. 2, you spoke to each other and you were working as a team, you and your wife. It wasn't just you or it wasn't just her. And thirdly, you had a plan of action, and you put the plan into place. So if anyone's out there who's feeling a bit overwhelmed or a bit low, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And Darren's example there is just such a fantastic true life story of how you do it, and how you just got to put one foot in front of the other and know that you're going to get out of it, right?
And I know that some people are so stressed out, it's hard to think. Sometimes you need third-party help. And I think nowadays there's a bit more of that around. There wasn't so much in those days that I was aware of. And most employers provide an employee assistance program that people can talk to, get some counselling. But we need to change our mind and our state of mind to get into a plan. And one of the ways to do that is to focus on what we want. And it's hard. We need to get in the present. We need to, we only worry about things that might happen or things that have happened. We need to get in the present. And one of the ways to do that is to start to look at what we're grateful for. So, okay, I've got some bad stuff here, but what am I grateful for right now? And when I was so grateful for my opportunity, I was so grateful for my other half, I was so grateful for the people that are around me. And suddenly you start to get grounded, and then you say, right, what do I want? And all I wanted was to be debt free. All I wanted was to come out the other end and not have to worry about money. And then I put a plan together. But then it was about taking control. If you're out of control, you feel stressed. And I wanted to be in control. And I talk about this all the time now, in my everyday work. If we can help employees feel in control of most things financial, we start to reduce the levels of stress. And then we need to work on it because things happen, things change. So it's not something you do once. It's something you have to then work on all the time. But it's when we feel out of control, that's where the stress comes from. So I suddenly had control. I had a plan that I believed in I could do. I had a supportive wife to help me with the whole administration of the whole thing. And then we started to follow the plan. And the more, 2 or 3 months in, it was actually got easier because I could see my goal getting closer. The more closer you get to it, the more motivated you are. So it's that early stage that I found is the hard bit. And this is what I focus a lot on now. I want to get people into budget planning. And then they're so stressed out they can't do it. We've got to try and just force ourselves to do it. Get to the emotional moment where we see our finances, know what's going on, and then we make the good decisions. And that's what I learned. That was a big year for me.
So how did you feel at the end of it when you'd paid that overdraft? Forget the £3 that you put the V sign on, but that you paid it off. How did you and your wife feel then, and what did you do next?
We celebrated. I gave myself a day off, which was quite rare. We went to the pictures. As soon as I paid that off, we took the day off, and it's quite weird. And again, something else I've realised that you need to rest. You need to have proper quality time off to do the best job you can on anything. There's that great story about the two wood choppers, chopping wood in a competition, and one kept stopping for every 5 minutes for 1 minute and having a break. But he won the competition, and everyone's saying, "Well, how come you're chopping less?" And he said, "Well, I was sharpening my axe." And that's kind of what I learned. Again, the next thing was you need to take time out. And so we went to the pictures, and for me to not do 12-hour day and to have an afternoon off like that, I felt guilty for a while, but actually that's what we did. And then I felt liberated, but also, interestingly, my income went up and up and up after that. I mean, it went up. I mean, it probably doubled 2 or 3 times the next few years. It really did, because I was in a good place. And I didn't feel like I'm persuading someone to save and I'm in debt. That felt wrong.
Yeah. So there's 2 things that I'm picking up there. One was you celebrated the success, no matter how small or big it was, even just getting 0, have no money, but you didn't owe any money. And you celebrated immediately. That's very important. And secondly,
it was Robin Hood we went to see. I remember.
But here's the thing: the second point, which is really, really important from that story, is that your day job, you felt it was you were incongruent with your identity. Your sense of identity felt like a fraud because you didn't feel you could be the best version of you carrying this debt. So that's really important. You cannot do things that are against who you think you want to be. So that's great. So, okay, the income kept doubling. So did you start building wealth? Did you buy property? Did you start businesses? What happened then?
Well, I had a bit of bad luck because I bought a property, and then this was the time when interest rates were at 15.5%.
Early 90s, yeah, I remember it.
Crazy times. And then I didn't have any cash at that time. Obviously, I was back to 0, which was a good place to be for me. I'd already got a mortgage on a property, but I'd got 100% mortgage, and then the markets dropped and went against me, and I was trapped. I was stuck in it unless I found a big pile of cash to get the deposit for the next house and also to pay off the first house. I was stuck, and I was stuck there much longer than I wanted to be. It was a little maisonette. It was horrible. So eventually, what I did is I thought, I can't get rid of this place. I can't find a deposit and also pay sell the other place. So I had to rent that out, and then I bought another house. I managed to get a deposit together for the next house, and then so on and so forth. Eventually, I sold the flat once it came back. I didn't enjoy the renting thing. I realised I'm never going to be a property investor. That type of thing, it just didn't suit me. You've got to be pretty organised. Again, this thing's out of control. The government keep changing the rules around taxation on it and whatever. Interest rates can fluctuate.
It's a business renting property.
It is a business, and I didn't have the right mindset for that. So I had some bad tenants, and it was pain. It's just a stress that didn't suit my character. So as soon as I could sell it, I sold it and got out of it.
So you bought it for the next sort of family home, and then you had some kids, right? You had some children, and did that?
I had kids by 33. I started having kids.
Okay, so how did you become a really heavy saver, or was it because you're earning all this money, or were you still consuming a lot, or how did you battle between today and tomorrow?
So what happened was quite quickly. So once we bought the second property, I started to save more regularly then. And what I did is I learned that you need to save first, spend second, and so put the money away. Have it the day I get paid. Put it somewhere. Where it goes, how it invests is less relevant right now. It's the habits of doing it, which is what's most important. So what we did is so as soon as we got into that property, as soon as we sold the first property after moving to the second property, we started to save money. And what we then did, we saved up enough money to buy a bigger house. We were only there for 6-7 years, but we wanted to have children. We wanted a better house for the children. So we had our first baby, and then we moved very quickly. That was 20 years ago into the house we've got now, which was much, it's a pretty nice house, to be honest, which we bought. And at the time, even then I felt a bit young to be in this grand place, but still haven't quite finished paying it off, but we're not a million miles away. But what I realised then is also then children start to come into focus. It changes you as a person. Materialistic things go out the window. I mean, I still like cars. That's my passion. So I always liked a car. But for me, children are the number one thing. That's what it's all about. And I wanted to do best for them. So my purpose was for saving was my children's education. And what I managed to do, and they're 19 and 17 now, but I'm so pleased that I managed to privately educate them all the way through. And I had to do that partly from income, partly from starting to save before that cost came on board. So probably 6 or 7 years before I needed to start spending on school fees, I'd started to save for that.
So there was a motivation and a clear plan, and it was in tune with your values. What was important to you
It was, and it's when you've got a big enough why. So I had to get out. Going back, I had a big enough why. I didn't want to stay in this horrible, stressy debt situation. Kids come along, they give you the why. That's my reason, and everything revolves around that. And so giving them the best start in life was brilliant. I had a terrible, terrible school life. Hated it. State school, grammar school, fair enough. Very bright people, not my style. Couldn't wait to get out. Hated every minute of it, apart from the friendships I had. But my kids, I wanted choice, and I wanted them to have. And I thought, well, I've gone from a father who, could hardly read or write, so I've got to hear it's my responsibility to take the kids to the next level. And I think there's a lot of downward mobility with youngsters now, and I'd like to see my kids at least kind of match or still be upwardly mobile from where they currently are. But again, whatever makes them happy doesn't really matter.
Now, I'm interested to just explore with you, because now we talked about your children, and I kind of got an understanding. You have a very similar kind of home life, I think, and situation to me, and a career. And I've had all those same things for similar age, right? I'm 51, I think you're 52 or 53, right? So there's lots of things I'm nodding with, because I understand about the negativity and that, and then the children do change your life. But I'm really interested to explore how you have gone about trying to teach your children to value money, to respect money, and to see it in proportion, and also to be their own people when they grow up in slightly more comfortable times. Let's not call it, say, wealthy or rich. Let's just say much more comfortable than we had, because sometimes adversity growing up can be the catalyst for doing good things. It also can hold you back. So I'm just interested to explore, if we can, in the time we've got left, just that kind of how you've approached that, because that's a big problem for lots of people.
I think it's a big problem for kids my children, especially my son, he went to a school where he was probably the poorest kid there, let's say. He's got friends of Arab billionaires, and some terminally wealthy people who put their kids into this school. And it's, that was lovely. The kids are all lovely. And to be honest with you, I found that these super rich parents were lovely too. And a lot of people, think, oh, stinking rich, they're all horrible. They're not. These people are so rich, they can focus on the other things in life. They're not worried about money or trying to impress anyone. As we mentioned,
money belief, isn't it? That's an inadequacy that people often feel.
Yeah.
That comes from a money script, which has been bedded from upbringing. It's not always, you've got to judge everyone on their.
I found them to be, and I'm still friends with lots of them, I found them to be delightful. And I think it's because they weren't obsessed with trying to impress. They weren't obsessed with trying to make money. They'd made it. Most of them were self-made as well. And I think that is different to people that are born into it. They had the skills and they'd grown into that. If someone's a millionaire, you can either be in cash or in your mind. I think these people have grown there over time. So most of them were self-made, in fairness. But my two kids, they've mixed in private school education kind of thing. That's very privileged for them. It means they get good grades and all the rest of it, and we could pick a really good school. But they've lived in a world of abundance. They've had the most amazing holidays, and I wanted to give them a great, great family experience. One, I'm full of memories. I could have many more millions in the bank right now if I had saved much more. I've spent quite a bit, but I have saved. But for me, it was also about experiencing life, and the kids have had a great time. But also, they have to learn for themselves, and they absolutely have, because I've been quite strict on them earning their own keep. And so whilst they got pocket money, as soon as they were able to get a bit of work, I encourage them to do that. And my daughter's on a gap year, but she's a gymnastics coach and she gets paid to do that. It's not a lot. It's a, tenner an hour sort of thing. My son works a day and a half in a local garage fixing cars. Not that he wants to be a mechanic, but I wanted him to hang out with some mechanics, and it's built his confidence, because these guys, they banter, they're down to earth, they're good, their hearts are in the right place. I really love them, and they brought him out of himself. He was quite sheltered, and he's now much more confident. He sees the real world, and my daughter's mixing in the real world now by working and dealing with lots of other children, but also they can only spend their own money. And my daughter's going to university, and I've not promised to pay for it. Now, I hope she doesn't see this, I will. But at the moment, she believes that she's having to fund it herself. So she's getting her student loans and all the rest of it. I might give her a few bob along the way to help out. We just bought, I bought her a car, and she's got all her stuff for her room at university in halls and stuff. But she thinks she's going to come out of university with the debt. And she's chosen to go into that, knowing when she comes out, she'll have the debt that she'll have to either pay off or live with in her role, in her responsibility when she gets a job. Now, what I'll do is when we get there, I'll have a look at the situation. I'll probably pay it off. But I want her to learn for herself. I want her to take personal responsibility. And I think it's very important. If she's chosen to go, she wants that career, she can pay for it. And if I want to give her a little treat in 5 years' time, then I'll do that. My son, he doesn't want to go to university. He wants to go to work. He was a bit like me from that side of things. He wants to do motorsport. I've been doing motorsport for quite a few years. He's been involved in that. He wants to, he's learning motorsport, but he actually wants to be a car salesman, believe it or not. I said, look, I don't care what you sell.
Do you in car selling? I don't know. Interesting.
Only high end. He wants to sell Lamborghinis and Ferraris and stuff like that. He said, well, a month, I said, and I'll be laughing. So, I mean, that's 10 years away. But in the meantime, he needs to learn everything about cars, motorsport, classic cars, and he's doing all that.
So you're encouraging them, you're trying to get them to understand the value of money. You're not holding it over them like a sort of Damocles or whatever, but you're trying to sort of guide them and show them anything's possible. Is that what you're saying when it comes to
my daughter's pretty bad at saving. She does spend too quickly, so and she pays a price for that, but I leave her there. I don't bail her out. So she runs out.
She's got to have some pain, right, to learn. They're not the finished article, are they, young people?
Yeah. Well, when they're young, they're going to put their hand in the fire and burn themselves. Well, sometimes you've got to let them do it. And, she's doing it. My son is already a fantastic saver. Now, so is that nurture or nature? I think there's a bit of nature in there, to be honest, because I wasn't that good at his age. But he has the most amazing things. I bought him a car, and I said, I'll spend the same on your car as I've spent on your sister's. It's only fair. And he said, okay, but can I just use that money and add to it? And he wanted a much better car. And he had a scooter, he's got the best computer, but all of it paid for himself, apart from the bit I put into the car. Everything else he saved for. And he's a really, really good saver. He's not profligate at all. He actually does it. So I'm not worried about him from that perspective at all. But my daughter does need a little bit of help around that area. And I think her learning the value of earning her own money and spending her own money is stage one.
Yeah, interesting. Well, look, thanks for that. That's really good. So as we sort of, and obviously in terms of moving forward, I know you're very, very big you've got a fantastic thing called Financial Fitness Fridays, which I really, really recommend. Where can people find out more about what you guys are up to and what you're doing and your videos and all that sort of stuff? Where's the best place for people to go?
Yeah, so if you get on the Secondsight website, which is second-sight, so it's written out in full, second-sight.com. If you go to the events page, people can register for it. And what they do, when they register, they get registered. So at the moment, we've got 8 weeks. So this is week 5 tomorrow. And so what we do, we run it like a show. I think we've got to try and make finance a bit more interesting. It is a bit dull and boring. I think the key reason it's a bit dull and boring is it's delivered boringly by people that mean well, but they don't really understand human communication and don't understand human motivation. And I think whilst it's easy to go and find out information on Google about finance. It's all out there. We don't need anyone if you really want to do the research yourself. What's more important is the psychology. And 80% of financial well-being is psychology. It's getting people to want to have a better future, want to save for all the right reasons. What's their big why? Because if you get them motivated enough, they can go on their smartphone onto Google and find an answer. A good employer will provide the answers, but they also need to provide the motivation. And what's missing is a lot of stuff gets put out there and there's very poor engagement. And it's because it's not affecting, it's not connecting people at the emotional level. There's not a big enough, we don't find out what they want. We don't find out why they want it. We've got to do that bit. And so Financial Fitness Friday is a different way of doing it. Rather than a lecture with some boring slides and a load of technical stuff, we bring the two together. And I want to make sure that we look at the financial well-being aspect of every subject. So what I tend to do is I run it like a show. I do an introduction. I talk about the psychology of it and the why and the want. And the particular subject we're talking about, I try to link the two together. Then I bring in a specialist in that particular area, and then I interview them. We have a few questions that are set up to get the thing going. Then we take questions from the audience. It finishes in half an hour. We always end exactly on half an hour, but we also carry on running with Q&A for another 15 minutes because some people have to go because they've got other meetings, but some people do want to hang around. And if they put in questions that benefit the rest of the audience, then we answer those questions. We record them, so we put them on a YouTube channel as well. So people look at the previous ones, they're all there I think it's on the Foster De Novo YouTube channel. But you can access it through the Secondsight website. Secondsight, as you can see there, is the employee benefits part of Foster De Novo. So it's one company really, with just two different divisions.
No, fantastic resource. It really, really brings it alive. I never miss a Financial Fitness Friday. I always watch the recording because I can't watch it live, but I always watch it. I've been in the business for years and years and years, and I write and speak about all this, and I love everything he does. He's a really top guy. So what words of wisdom or top tips could you leave our listeners with before you go, Darren? Anything you want to sort of leave?
Yeah, something I'm banging my drum about a lot at the moment because I've realised how important it is. I mean, I'll tell you the truth about something that happened to me 2 years ago. One of my finest friends took his own life, and what was shocking about it was that he had a few problems for sure. He was ex-military, so he had some of those things. He carried them around. He lived with them. But do you know what really shocked me was that when we talking to his family, unravelled his affairs, you could see that he'd completely run out of money 2 days before he went. And I'm his mate. I mean, we actually jointly bought a little boat together for the river. He wasn't thinking of exiting early at that point, but he went. And the only thing we can put it down to is he'd run out of money. And he had a lot of cash from the sale of a house, and it just frittered it all away. And it had gone. And 2 days before he took his own life, the money had gone. So I realised that one of the triggers and one of the key things was his financial well-being. And the financial well-being is so important for our emotional well-being. It really is. If we can get finances in order, life's a lot easier, And so I decided at that point that I'm going to expand my work further. I'm going to go deeper because whilst I'm improving the financial well-being of thousands of people, I know that there's a few out there that I'm saving a life or two because we've got them to go slightly down a different direction now before it's too late. So that really boosted my endeavour to never allow that to happen again. And one of the key things I think that people don't do and employers don't encourage it, I would say before we do anything, make sure you've got an emergency fund of cash. You imagine if you had £2,000 or £3,000 instantly accessible in the bank to cover expenses before COVID came along. Can you imagine how less stressed people will be about job certainty and furloughing and pay cuts and all that? Because we've got some cash. And then when that emergency comes, what's it there for? Yeah, you get emergency. We get expensive vet bills and boilers and car engines and all those sort of things. The money's there we've got to find the money for those things. We've got no choice. If we've got an emergency fund, it stops us going down the slippery slope of toxic debt. So my advice to anyone I meet and everywhere I go to is we've got to have an emergency fund as the fundamental piece of our financial planning foundation. That then other things come from that. Start there. What we do in the workplace, everyone's focused on 30, 40 years down the line. I think we need to focus on right now, get that bit done, decide how much you need in that, how much do you need to have an emergency fund? If you can't think of a number, start with £500 and then make it 1,000 and then start going 3 months expenses and then go 6 months expenses. But you can be feeding that. I'll tell you what, that will take so much stress out of people's lives. Absolutely. And it will be the foundation and the springboard for all the other financial planning that you might want to do going forward. And also save each month out of your wages, but take the savings out first. Save first, spend what's left.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
That's the key.
Darren, you are a superstar. I could listen to you all day. Absolutely love your passion. You're a kindred spirit, and I think you're doing great work. So look, check out the Secondsight website, the Foster de Novo YouTube channel. Darren's also got a fantastic book if you're an employer looking to get it. What's the name? Just remember the title of the book.
It will Make Their Money Count, and it's how to run an effective workplace financial education program. I wrote it 2 or 3 years ago. There's a lot of psychology in there that's important. If anyone wants one, just contact me through the website or LinkedIn, and I'll send you a free copy, electronic copy, no problem at all.
And I can recommend, that's a fantastic book, well worth reading. I've got a copy, always refer to it, fantastic. Darren, thank you very much for being on, appreciate your time.
Jason, you're doing a brilliant job out there, mate. You are changing the world. Make sure you keep doing what you're doing, mate. I like watching you too. So one day I might just get you on Financial Fitness Fridays and we'll change seats. How's that sound?
Oh, yes, I'm always up for a bit of exposure. Yeah, absolutely. Share the love.
Yeah. All right, we'll do that. All right, take care and good luck.
Thanks for listening. If you want more money insights, do visit my website at jason-butler.com or connect with me on Twitter or Instagram at JB the Wealthman. See you next time.